Welcome, traveler. Look, I see you've been out enjoying the sights, and honestly, the vibrant daytime streets of India, they are absolutely something to behold. I mean, the colors, the bustling crowds, that rich history, it's literally a sensory masterpiece, right? But as a local historian who spent, well, years digging through dusty archives and listening to local whispers, I really feel it's my duty to guide you through a slightly different kind of tour in this explainer. You see, those exact same sun-drenched streets, they hide some pretty deeply unsettling secrets. Once that sun dips below the horizon, the architecture of the past casts these incredibly long, dark shadows, and the regional folklore, well, it comes completely alive. It is so easy to feel secure when you're wrapped up in a comfortable hotel with all those nice modern amenities. But let me ask you, do you truly think you're safe here? Now, I ask this not to frighten you. Okay, maybe just a little bit. But I really want to pull you right into this shadowy world of local lore. What we're going to dive into today, these aren't just your standard campfire tales. We're talking about documented experiences, real warnings passed down through generations about what actually happens when the sun sets and that veil between our world and the next gets, a little too thin. Part 1. Phantom of Delhi Cant. Okay, so during the day, Delhi Cantonment is this lush, sprawling military area. We're talking over 10,000 acres. It's got a heavy army presence, defense housing, so naturally, people consider it one of the absolute safest spots in the heart of New Delhi. But talk to the locals, they've practically charted out a terrifying schedule for when night falls. Basically, between the witching hours of 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., a spectral figure steps out of the shadows. Witnesses constantly report seeing a middle-aged woman with gray hair, sometimes even noted as having unusually hairy arms, just wandering these desolate roads. And she's always wearing a pristine white sari. It's a color tied to mourning and spirituality here, which absolutely fits that classic woman in white trope. But here's the kicker. She doesn't just wander aimlessly. She actively approaches vehicles. So the golden rule of Delhi Cant is incredibly simple. Never stop your car to give anyone a lift. This is literally the official advice handed out to local call center employees finishing up those early morning shifts. Why? Well, if you see this woman asking for a ride and you deny her, local lore says she isn't just going to stand there on the curb. She is going to chase your vehicle. And honestly, it doesn't matter if you floor it. Witnesses absolutely swear she floats right alongside the car in dead silence, perfectly matching your speed, just staring right at you through the glass. The belief is that she's the spirit of a woman who was killed on that exact route, forever trying to reach her final destination. But, this terror isn't just boxed into the city limits. It completely bleeds out onto the open, dusty highways of nearby Rajasthan. So if you're planning a desert drive, consider this your official warning. Down at the Pangar Fort, which is actually legally restricted after sunset, by the way, people report hearing a woman crying and the super sharp clinking of glass bangles echoing in the dark. Then you have the cursed, abandoned Kuldara village, where visitors talk about this overwhelming feeling of being watched, and even finding fresh footprints of children pressed right into the dry mud. But honestly, maybe the most terrifying spot is the so-called Bloody Alley of NH79 near Dudu village. Legend has it a tragic accident claimed a mother and child there. Now, drivers at night frequently end up slamming on their brakes, tires screeching, trying to avoid a sudden apparition of a woman in a red sari carrying a baby, literally begging for help right in the middle of the highway. Part 2. The Midnight Knock. All right, let's move off those open highways and talk about a fear that hits way closer to home. You know that claustrophobia of a locked house or a hotel room late at night? You lock the door, you pull the curtain shut, and you think, all right, I'm completely cut off and secure from the outside world. But what if the threat absolutely doesn't care about your locks? Picture this. It's 3:12 a.m. In our source material, one traveler recounted spending Halloween night completely alone. The streets were dead quiet outside. And then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., they wake up to a sound at their front door. And I'm not talking about a quick, friendly tap. This was a deliberate, heavy, incredibly slow, dragging sound, just a hollow thud against the wood. When they peeked out the window, the porch was totally pitch black. The motion sensor lights out there, the ones that normally trigger if a single leaf blows by, hadn't even clicked on. Something was standing right at that door, completely bypassing the physical rules of our world. And then the knocking moved to the back door. At this point, the situation just escalates into total sensory overload. The traveler grabs their phone, right, trying to call for help, but there is absolutely no cell service. A complete digital blackout. The house is deadly silent, the porch is pitch black, and then, faintly, coming from the inside hallway, a child's voice whispers, we saw your light on. Just imagine that primal vulnerability for a second. That sudden realization that whatever was outside the house is now somehow inside with you, noticing the tiny details of what you're doing, yet staying completely unseen. To really wrap our heads around these disturbances, we need to look at the folklore backing them up. We're talking about the witching hour, or the devil's hour. In global folklore, these early morning hours, right around 3 a.m., are when the veil between the living and the dead is supposed to be at its thinnest. So, from an analytical standpoint, a slow, deliberate knock at this exact time, it isn't just some local kids pulling a prank. Traditionally, it symbolizes an unknown, supernatural visitor actively testing your boundaries. It's a pretty chilling historical reminder to any traveler of just how incredibly vulnerable we all are when we're surrounded by darkness and cut off from the waking world. Part 3. Mystery of Room 307. Okay, so right here in the Old City, there's this sprawling historic hotel containing room 307. And let me tell you, just mentioning that room number is enough to make the locals shudder. The sheer terror inside didn't just happen overnight, it was a slow burn. It escalated. First, guests started reporting these heavy, completely unexplained footsteps pacing back and forth on the floorboards while they were trying to sleep. Then it stepped up to physical interactions, bathroom taps turning on full blast all by themselves, water just rushing in a totally empty room. But the absolute final straw, the event that forced the hotel management to finally step in, was actually caught on tape. The hotel CCTV camera recorded the heavy wooden door of room 307 slowly opening all on its own at exactly 3 a.m., while the room was completely 100% unoccupied. You know how it is, though. Stories fade, and sometimes desperate travelers make really terrible mistakes. Our sources detail this wild account of a young tourist who rolled into town super late at night. The hotel was entirely booked solid, except for 307. The older gentleman working the reception literally pleaded with him not to take it, but the tourist just wouldn't listen. He completely ignored the warning. Well, the second he walked in, despite it being a really warm night outside, the room was piercingly, unnaturally freezing, like the ancient walls were just radiating dread. Around 2 a.m., he heard those slow footsteps right outside his door, followed by a light knock. He opened it up. Nothing there. But as he turned back around, his blood just ran cold. In the vanity mirror, he saw a clear shadow of someone standing directly behind him. He spun around, but the room was totally empty. Suddenly, the lights violently snapped off. Plunged into absolute pitch darkness, he felt this freezing breath on his ear, and a voice hissed, "Leave this room." Needless to say, he bolted. He ran straight down to the lobby, practically shaking out of his skin, and told the old receptionist everything. And guys, here is the absolute heart-stopping twist of this explainer. The old man didn't even look surprised. Instead, he just calmly reached behind the front desk, pulled out this vintage, faded photograph, and slid it right across the counter. It was a picture of a young boy who had died in room 307 under highly mysterious circumstances many, many years ago. The tourist looked at the photo, and all the blood just drained right out of his face. The dead boy in the photograph looked exactly like him. Literally, the exact same eyes, the exact same face. That spirit wasn't just haunting the room, it was waiting for him. So what's the legacy of this cursed space today? Well, the hotel management finally threw in the towel. Room 307 has been permanently sealed shut for the last 12 years. Nobody goes in, nobody comes out. Yet, guests and staff walking past that heavy wooden door late at night, they still report hearing these frantic, wet whispers just scratching against the wood from the inside. And honestly, perhaps the most unsettling detail of this entire story, the actual physical key to room 307 has completely vanished. Literally nobody can find it. It's almost as if someone or something has officially decided that that door just needs to remain closed forever. Which kind of brings us to this final thought for our explainer today. Are some doors just better left permanently locked? Because as our local lore clearly shows us, not every mystery is actually meant to be solved, and not every darkness is meant to be brought into the light. I really hope you've enjoyed this little journey into our regional shadows. Definitely keep these stories in mind, traveler. And tonight, when you head back to your own hotel room and flip off that lamp, maybe listen just a little bit closer to the creaks out in the hallway, because you really never know who or what might be wandering the corridors at 3 a.m. Stay safe out there, and thanks for exploring all of this with me.